And just pause it. Okay, we should be ready to go.
Awesome. Welcome everyone to District 3 neighborhood meeting tonight. If you remember, we do have mics in the ceiling now, so we won't necessarily be using mics here. So if you have a comment or need to speak, you're able to do so right where you're sitting without a microphone. With that though, try to limit any sort of side conversation so that anybody online can hear the discussion that's going on here as part of the agenda. So with that, the first item is a zone. Rachel, are you introducing Aaron?
Yeah, so this first item, just real quick, and Aaron, correct me if we're wrong, we're still in the department review process.
Yes.
With this one?
Yep.
So they've had their idea, they've applied, they're now in the review process. So what you see presented tonight might change a little bit before it goes to planning commission, because it changes depending on what the city needs them to do. So let me.
And Aaron, can you give a good, this is the one I think I always get confused on. I always think it's the one further south. Because they're both on 1100 West, right?
Okay, so yeah, so this one is north of the project that you might have seen at Lakeview Grove, which is a 55-acre one that's going to planning commission on November 13th. So this is just north of that, maybe. So context, 1100 West comes down Lakeview Parkway, goes like that. So there's 55 acres right here. That's going to be a planning commission. That's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about this one just north of it. So they're gonna, these access roads are some of the things that will definitely remain through this plan. The rest of this plan is very likely to change. And I say that because they didn't kind of address the Dry Creek going through the middle of the property. So there's going to be a lot of changes through here. But they're asking for a zone change to an R18 PD. The PD stands for performance development. And that tool allows the developer to do this kind of stuff. So they're able to mix the units or the lot sizes and kind of adjust widths and depths and setbacks through the performance development overlay, as long as they provide some larger open spaces for the community. So that's a requirement to get to this and to get to these.
Aaron, are we worried about parking in this like we are?
We're not worried about parking. All these will have garages. So they'll all have individual homes with their individual garages for other off-street parking.
But not like a Slate Canyon thing where they've only got enough for one car per household on the street?
Correct, yeah. Each one of these is going to require 3 off-street spaces. So what we typically see with that is a 2-car garage and then a driveway parking tandem up towards the garage.
So I mean like on-street parking where they've only got enough for 1 car per household on the road.
Sorry, I can't hear you very much, Becky.
Are the cars, are these lots really narrow so you can only park 1 car in front of a house, or are they wider than that? I think is our point.
Is like a Slate Canyon Drive kind of thing?
No, it's not a Slate Canyon Drive kind of thing. So we should be protected against that.
Are these public roads or is this an HOA?
These would all remain public roads. Again, the roads are most likely, these access roads are gonna stick in there. These are likely to change. This is probably going to change to connect up through. We don't like cul-de-sacs so much in the city of Provo. This would be private. This little access lane would all be private, but the rest should remain as public as it goes through the kind of typical subdivision part of it.
Does a typical street right away on the city standards allow for on-street parking, or are there
Yes.
some cross sections that don't allow?
Yeah, most allow for on-street parking. The narrowest section allows for on one side. So yeah, there'd be on-street parking for most of these roads. except of course the private, I think that's gonna be too narrow for any type of parking. So,
You said you were gonna require 3 off-street parking spots per unit, is that right?
yeah, that's just a city standard there. But like Rachel said, this is very early in the process. Just had his first review sent back to them. They emailed me actually today to meet and talk about those comments as they try to work through that. Yeah, go
Is
ahead.
that lake area? Are those lots like townhomes right there?
They're like a detached townhome, I guess is the best way to say that. From the products they've shown, they're looking at very small setbacks, but a townhome project that doesn't share a wall, if you could imagine that.
It's like a 10 meter.
Yeah, they're about 35 to 45 feet wide, so they're pretty narrow. They did provide some examples, take these with a grain of salt. These are just examples of things that they're looking at as they start to get an idea. So there's kind of a narrow product, 2-car garage, door, 2-story. It's the project area in context. Zoning. So this packet is submitted by the applicant.
What's the typical lot size in the other section to the left?
Those will be mostly 8,000 square foot lots. So because it's a performance development, they could range from 6,000 to 12,000. That's what we saw in the development below this, but averaging 8,000.
How are we gonna make sure that they don't go over what they're allotted, like the 4 units to the acre? And this PD thing, are they gonna have to have a development agreement?
Your voice is so soft. Can you
Yeah.
speak louder?
So the 4 units, the 3 units per gross acre, that's gonna be part of the review. If they're over that, we're gonna tell them to cut it back. And that's just meeting code. That's part of the staff city review. Oops.
So we need a development agreement on that, because that's code. So we can require that.
Yeah, it's backed up in code already.
So that was the south of Footprinters, right? North of Footprinters.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Just south of Footprinters. That road right there actually cuts up to the street that connects to Footprinters right there.
Is that one that street is a dead end street?
Yeah, so that would just be stubbed until this property develops adjacent to the street. I think everybody,
It's not connecting to that little street where there's a couple houses already.
correct. Yeah, they don't own that land. So that's owned by Lloyd William Jr., it looks like, in the Bible Church.
Oh, they're that far over?
Yeah, that goes deep, for pretty far west into the property there. Any other questions on this one?
And you said they were going to have to account for the creek there that is kind of dryish right now, right?
Yeah, we identified that in the general plan, the Southwest Neighborhoods Plan, as an amenity that the community wants to protect and enhance. Try to put a trail along it and have that be an amenity for the larger area.
Okay.
So we're gonna enforce that.
That wasn't on their plans though.
It wasn't on the plan, so that's one of the comments they received. Okay, Rachel, you want to go to the next one?
Let's go to the next one. And this one has already gone to planning commission and city council and been approved.
Yes, so this has been approved by the city council, subject to a development agreement, and that development agreement is in the works. So this, to give you some context, that's 2000 North in Geneva, just right there on the corner where Provo is on the border with Orem. It was kind of a leftover piece after the city improved the intersection there for Geneva and 2000 North. The city owned that property. So we got together with Provo Housing Authority and are creating a workforce housing project. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's how it looks kind of in context: 6 townhomes, I think we have a better picture of it here. So rear loaded garages, so that will be accessed off 2000 North. All the garages will be back here, front doors facing 2000 North. And that will be stipulated as income contingent workforce housing for the city. Preferred to be going to employees, firemen, policemen, things like that. So it's a joint project between Provo City and Provo Housing Authority. It's been approved by the council and we're just working on that development agreement now.
Is that for only owner? Right?
Yes, yeah, that will be a stipulation of,
Retain or?
so the land is a land trust. It's not with the land trust. So Provo Housing will hold the land, and the people that qualify will be able to own and build equity, a bit smaller percentage of equity than normally because they don't have the land, but still be able to build equity in that townhome to be able to eventually step up and get their own homes.
And it's in perpetuity. So when they sell it, they have to sell it to someone.
Another qualified buyer would have to come back. Yep. So it's a pretty good program. We're pretty excited about it. We're excited to see how it works. We'd like to do more of this. More questions on that one?
Are there any questions on the land trust or how it works or what workforce housing is?
So the city maintains the trust?
Provo Housing Authority.
Okay.
So the Provo Housing Authority has a separate group that's the Utah Regional Land Trust. Land Trust is the one that will own the land underneath these units. So it's not actually Provo Housing, it's kind of a subsidiary of Provo Housing. Land Trust is.
Provo Housing is a different entity from the city.
Yes.
We're not in the business of renting this kind of thing out. Provo Housing Authority, they do manage different houses. They do all this kind of stuff. And then they have a land trust thing that does that. So we give them the land and then we put deed restrictions on it. So only Provo City employees within that income level can purchase the homes. This way we have a place for our employees to perpetually live, right? So as they decide they want a bigger house, they can take their equity and move someplace else, and then another employee can come in and take their spot.
What is the relationship between Provo Housing and Provo City?
There's not.
It's not, there's no.
It's just a
direct
business
link.
transaction.
Just happen to be working together on this.
So in order to purchase a house, if somebody was selling it, you have to be a Provo City employee, or would Provo Housing ever rent it out to low income?
They're not ever gonna rent it. So if they're gonna be for sale, if they don't have qualified city employees asking in the queue, then they'd have to open it up to somebody else that qualifies within that income bracket.
Like teachers or nurses.
So it's more of a townhome condo for sale. And is this the first of its kind in Provo City?
No. Yes.
The Provo Housing has many units in the city that they either own or manage.
Yeah.
And most of those. This is the first one with the land trust because the land trust just recently got formed.
And we want to do more of these even on the west side. So if you have questions, please ask. Because it's completely different than something like the boulders. This is workforce housing, right?
We hope it's a big success, so people will be excited about doing more.
Is this similar to like what we were talking about over at the high school?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, we hope to do the same thing.
What was the
so
question?
The high school property.
High school?
Over by the high school.
Yep, with the city on land there, we hope to do a similar thing.
So it's not really affordable housing, it's workforce housing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Really appreciate it. Okay, moving on here, the next item, we have Hannah Peterson. believe. Is Hannah here? Yep. Hannah's gonna be talking about ADUs. She's a representative from District number 2, is my understanding. And where exactly is just District number 2?
Southeast Provo. So think of Slate Canyon area. I live in the Provost neighborhood, Provost or Provost South, but we now incorporate the foothills and the Wasatch neighborhood too, which are against the foothills right there in South Provo. So I'm a little unclear. I know I'm clear now on what you wanted, so I hope I answer your questions. Background, my first house I ever brought in Provo was a house with an ADU. So just so you know where I'm coming from, that's how my husband and I got into the house. That's how we afforded our first house. And that's how we bought it. That's actually how I got involved kind of with Provo City zoning, is I marched myself down to the zoning office because I wanted to buy an ADU over in Southeast Provo, which is where I live now, and they were illegal at the time. So they showed me on the map where I could buy a house with a legal accessory dwelling unit, which is ADU. If you don't know, that means it's an apartment that you're renting out, but it's owner occupied, versus a duplex, which is where the top and the bottom might be rented out, but the owner lives elsewhere. So I found out where they lived and it was very affordable. I live in Provost neighborhood. I know that all ADUs are legal everywhere that you're at. We have a long history of ADUs in Southeast Provo. Most of them have been illegal because it hasn't been zoned for legal ADUs there for a long time. And now a lot of them are, some of them aren't. It's a little nebulous right now, but Rachel asked me just to talk a little bit about the pros and cons that we've seen in our neighborhood from ADU, so that you would have so you would know what to look out for maybe. And I didn't have a chance to do a display, but some of the pros that we have seen in our neighborhood have definitely been affordability. I mean, I think that's why that they have encouraged ADUs, is it helps young first-time home buyers get into a house at a much more affordable, in an affordable way. And I think that that's what we have seen, a lot of increased affordability. The other thing that we have seen is that when we have had ADUs that are really an ADU, they're owner occupied and not a duplex, those ADUs in general are more well-maintained than a duplex. So those, I would say, are the two biggest pros that we have found in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood might be a little bit different from yours. It's an older neighborhood, and there's smaller houses in the neighborhood. And so when we have an ADU put in some of those houses that might only be 1,800 square feet, for example, or even 2,400 square feet, you basically have an apartment that's 800 upstairs and 800 downstairs, or maybe 1,000 upstairs and 1,000 downstairs. Let me back up a little bit. What our neighborhood did when ADUs were legal is we had about 74 people from our neighborhood, and we went through and we basically identified the owner for every single house in our neighborhood. We used Utah County records. We knocked on doors. We made sure that we knew who everybody was, and then we made sure we knew who owned the property, just so we had an idea of what was going on in our neighborhood. And one thing that we found is that our neighborhood had an extremely high number of rental properties. In some areas of the neighborhood where they had built condos or townhomes for affordable housing, in some of those neighborhoods, it was 70 to 90% investor owned. People that lived out of state who have bought up all of this affordable housing. And in the areas where we had smaller starter homes, we had well over 60 to 70% of those homes were owned by people that lived out of city or out of state. Many of them used as duplexes. I'm a landlord, and I've been a landlord in Provo for a long time. So I understand that when you rent to a single family, you can collect, 1/3% of their income, maybe even half of their income for their housing. When you rent it to a single family, you only have one income to pull from. When you can rent to a duplex, upstairs and downstairs, you can pull from two different incomes. And so it makes it much more lucrative as for a duplex to rent, as a duplex, or to rent it to lots of BYU kids. So now you kind of understand why we have so many rentals and so many illegal rentals in Southeast Provo. What we found, though, is we went through and we did a report that we presented to community development several years ago. And these are some of the findings that we did find.
One is to look out for is that homes with ADUs did sell for more than the regular homes. Because of the accessory dwelling unit, they were selling for, at the time, about $50,000 to $60,000 more than a house without an ADU.
Do they require their own separate entrance to?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So yeah, they sold for more. The houses that we're renting as duplexes, we're collecting about $200 to $400 more in rent overall than compared to a single family home. This is big one. Homes that were converted to ADUs, they did not convert back to single family homes. We only saw 2 homes in my entire neighborhood that ever did that ever went back to going to a single family home. Or maybe like a young couple bought the house, you had a couple kids, rented their basement apartment, and then decided I need more space, so I will open it back up. We have not seen that in my neighborhood. I'm not saying that's not happening in other places, but we rarely saw it. The pattern usually is once their family is growing, they move out of Provo or to a different area, and then usually kept that house for a rental, rented it as a duplex, or then sold it, you know, put it on the market. And then it was most of the time, not always, but most of the time bought by an investor who then rented it as a duplex. So I'm just throwing that out, that even has an impact on our neighborhood. We also met with the school, because we went through and we said, how many homes, these are smaller homes too, how many of these homes with ADUs have kids that are in the school system? We had less than 5% in our neighborhood because they're smaller houses that were actually going to the Provost Elementary School, that were attending Provost Elementary School, just because they were smaller. And so they attracted maybe like a young married or, you know, young singles or something like that, or people with just babies and small children. So it did lower the school attendance, and we went through with the principal, and basically they recorded, you know, how many children start from kindergarten and actually graduate from 6th grade. And there was a significant decline, especially in the neighborhoods that had the high ADU demographic. So it became just a little bit more transient. And I guess that's what it was. So if I were to say, overall, the pros and cons have been affordability, and it's been great to have them a little bit more maintained. But the biggest con is that our neighborhood, those areas are far more transient. There's we have some parking issues, and it is a constant battle to keep them owner occupied. And I would say if that's what you're looking for, I would say that's what I would pay attention to, is our neighborhood is playing catch up a little bit. Does that make sense? There's so many homes that are in violation that we're constantly having to report them. Where if I were a new area like yours, allowing ADUs, to not have to put yourself in a situation where you're playing catch up. Because it is a battle sometimes, you know, to report these over and over again. It's so lucrative to rent it as a duplex, but if you can stop it as soon as possible so that it doesn't become a pattern or the norm for your neighborhood.
So what are the tools to stop that? Because the law is that they have to be owner occupied, so.
They have to be owner occupied. They have to get a rental dwelling license, isn't that right, Becky? Which is they have to get a license that tells them how many people they can have in their basement. You can only have 2 people in the basement, and the owner of that house has to provide off-street parking for their tenant, which is a big one. That's the big one. So anytime, I would say anytime you know of a house that's an ADU, even if it's not a duplex yet, report it to the city so that the city can go ahead and work with those owners to get the rental dwelling license. Because when that couple, that family, or whoever owns that house starts going through and getting that license, they are going to learn very quickly that, oh, when I want to go and move to Mapleton or Lehigh, I am not going to be able to keep this house as a rental. And I'm going to have to find an off-street parking spot for it. I think that's the number one, is just to go ahead and keep track of it and just really encourage and educate the rental dwelling license, and that all houses with a rental have to get licensed.
I'm sorry, so what happens when it turns into a duplex? What does the city do, or what are what's the recourse there?
You report them to this zoning office as soon as possible, and you can do that online. If you have an account with the city, it's fairly easy. You just type in Provo City zoning complaint, and it will go through a portal where you can go ahead and report it. I often will follow up with my zoning officer, if you know who your zoning officer is, and let them know that I sent that through on the portal. make sure that they have, if I need to take any photographs or anything like that, or anything. Just that they're aware that it went through.
And do they make everybody move out or what?
We have seen, here's honestly, in our opinion, in our situation, it is a fight. We rarely have people comply with the law, and it's difficult. And so sometimes we do have to report them multiple times over and over again. We had members of the Wasatch neighborhood when it was just the Provost neighborhood, just like this. We had members of the Wasatch neighborhood come and tell us what to do about this. And their recommendation was, you just have to be extremely diligent. They told us in our neighborhood meetings, in our neighborhood committee, we have someone that keeps track of all of the rentals in our neighborhood. So we do all of that. They also put in parking regulation just because they had such a hard time over there. And our neighborhood's talking a little bit about that right now as well. But I would say just keep turning them in. You just have to keep reporting it over and over again. And I have knocked on the doors of some of my neighbors and called them up, and I said, you know what, I know that you lived here and you're wonderful and you've moved on and you're renting it as a duplex, but you can't. You just can't. And so it's a fight is the only word I would say.
I hear Lisa quite a bit on planning commission, and she'll say, I call one in, they come in and they take out their kitchen or whatever. It's so lucrative to do it, they'll turn around and they'll wait until the heat's up and then they'll turn it back in. And you just turn it back into a duplex. It's just some of them just don't care. Is that what you're seeing?
It's fairly common. I will be honest, we are only turning in people with duplexes at this time to our zoning office. Even though there's people with ADUs or maybe too many cars, we're just turning it in. And we have not seen a single one become compliant 100%. We have 2 houses in our neighborhood where it is a duplex, and they're almost 90% there. Like, it was a dad from Draper who bought a house for his kids upstairs and downstairs. And he poured an extra driveway, he fixed up the yard so it looks nice. So there's parking and everything, but technically it's still not owner occupied. You know, it's the dad who bought it for his kids. We don't care. We're not even dealing with that right now. So that one is somewhat compliant. And then we had another one where it was a wonderful young couple moved away to build a house elsewhere, rented it as a duplex. We notified them. They were not aware of the law. And so she's put her brother in the top and then renters in the bottom. Still not owner occupied, but I mean, at least there's some attempts to do something.
Are they ever used as short-term rentals, or do you have a problem with that as well with the houses? Or are they mostly people living there for schooling and families?
No, we have quite a few short-term rentals. And we have a member of our executive board who knocks on the doors when they're rented. And we try and just document information and get pictures of the cars so that the zoning office can have proof that they actually are being used as a short-term rental.
And then how does Provo City handle every house that you report that's doing the ADUs, the duplexes, or short-term rentals? What does the city do to?
They go.
Recourse does the city have?
They go out quickly. We'll knock on doors, contact people. We have, if the people don't comply, like what Becky talked about, they'll pull the kitchen out, you know, so then when the city officer comes back to inspect the house, it's compliant. But then when they leave, they put the kitchen back in. And the city officer has already closed the case. I really feel like the city zoning officers are working as hard as they can and doing everything that they can do. But it's so lucrative in certain areas of Provo, mine in particular, and it's such a norm that people know how to get around it. And that's what I would say is try and do it now so it does not become a pattern or a norm in your neighborhood.
Could you differentiate between ADU and the duplex?
Yes, ADU is accessory dwelling unit, and it means that the owner of the house, the person who is on the title, lives at that property and they are renting out a portion of the house.
Just a portion, including a kitchen?
A kitchen, like a basement apartment.
A garage, over the garage.
Yeah.
So it's not just a room.
No, it's like a kitchen, yes, with a separate entrance, is that right?
Do we have
Yes, it's a separate dwelling unit.
Separate dwelling unit, but the person who's on the title lives there. A duplex is just a house that has 2 rental units in it, or like a triplex or a fourplex. But like I said, usually those ADUs, accessory dwelling units, that's what the confusion is between that and a duplex, because you don't know if the owner lives in it.
And so it sounds like most of the problems happening with duplexes as opposed to ADUs. If it's an owner occupied, those usually haven't been as much of an issue. They're more compliant. They're trying to do things right. And the duplexes are the ones that are a little more problematic.
Yes, you wouldn't think that it would be that problematic, but it is when you have the numbers, like in our neighborhood, because it changes the nature of the neighborhood. It changes the neighborhood to be transient. It changes the neighborhood to be just primarily investor owned. You know, it makes a neighborhood where you don't have families or people coming that want to live there long term. They only see the neighborhood as just a stepping stone to move to someplace else. And so you lose sometimes that, you start to lose that neighborhood feel of long-term ownership, because it's just profiting outside investors.
So the problem's kind of more with that, with the duplex side as opposed to like the owner occupied.
Yes, and in our neighborhood, the second problem I think most people would be concerned about is the parking. We have very smaller houses with smaller lots, and most of the houses that have ADUs have a single driveway. You know, they were built just with a single car driveway. So even if they are approved to have a legal ADU, they only get 2 parking spots per unit. And how many people, you know, if you're a young couple and you live upstairs, you and your husband might have 2 cars, and then you're going to rent 2 cars, you know, underneath. And so even the ADUs, most of them are not compliant with the vehicle limit. And there are vehicle limit laws on the rental dwelling license they have to comply with, but it's very difficult to do it unless you're diligent. Like I said, there's that one couple where they worked with the city, they poured the extra driveway, they're trying to work with it, but it takes some effort.
Way I understand it on the ADU, well, with a duplex, you have to have a separate utility, gas and electric for a duplex. What about the ADUs? Are they included in the homeowners?
Yes, they don't have to be separate.
They don't have to be separate, okay.
You have to have a separate entrance. It has to have an inspection to make sure that, a big one is the window access. You know, you have to have what is that called? Egress windows. Egress windows, like carbon monoxide, and the smoke detectors and the parking. So that's what they'll come out and check. And I've had the zoning officers come to my properties before, and they'll just measure, you know, driveways, and they will tell you exactly how many cars you can rent to. And then they give you a form where you take that to your tenant and they have to sign it. And so that they know exactly how many cars and people they can bring in. So those tools are there. It's very difficult, I think, to get people to comply. So you do need to watch it and be somewhat aggressive. When we had Wasatch come, I told you, they just said that they were not messing around. They had a whole group of neighbors who were just so vigilant. And they hated having to do it a little bit, but that's what they had to do to protect their neighborhood from outside of investment. You know, and it was your predecessor, Gary McGinn, who told us that it was like a tube of toothpaste, and that if you cramped down on all of the illegal investors and illegal activity, it would just squirt to someone else. And he said that Wasatch and Foothills just squirted it to us. And so we've always been a little frustrated about it, but so that's what I would do. And yes.
So I used to live in your neighborhood with all renters, top and bottom, all around me. And so I was just gonna say it is a problem with the ADUs too. It's not just, I mean, it's like uncomfortable to live there with so many people. Even if somebody lives there who owns a home, there's still renters downstairs, you know, and there's cars, so many cars on the streets. So like, besides people who want to make that extra income, who likes ADUs? Like, why?
I think I can be honest. I loved an ADU when I was young married.
Sure.
And I think it's great. Yes, it was wonderful. And I think that there's some older people who, you know, they're retired, you know, they want to stay in their house. My parents have an ADU and they want to be able to rent it to like a viewing couple to help shovel their snow, you know, when they get older. But the reality is it's just so highly exploited in Provo. It is difficult. It's also the reason why I moved from that neighborhood. It's because I couldn't raise my kids there because it wasn't a stable, what I considered a stable neighborhood for children.
So are ADUs legal in Provo or in certain areas? So my question is, then, whenever you construct a house, it has to go through Provo zoning and planning. Why are they allowing, you know, them to build houses like that? Or if you do a major remodel, you're supposed to submit that as well to Provo zoning and planning. Why is it passing through?
I think, well, in West Provo, it's legal. Is it in East Provo, is it still that you have to get consensus from your neighbors?
That's in the process of being discussed for an amendment with the city council right now, but in answer to your question, when the building plan is reviewed, we look for a second kitchen in the basement or something like that, some evidence of a separate unit. If we see evidence of a separate unit, they either have to go through an ADU approval process or they have to sign a form that says that is only a second kitchen. Some people use for canning or different things and will not be used as an ADU. And then that document that says it's only a second kitchen is actually recorded on the title of the property to document the fact that you do not have an ADU there. All you have is a second kitchen. So a lot of these things take place with people just what we call bootlegging in the second unit. They don't get a building permit for it, they just bootleg it in.
So is there a way as a community to check on somebody's property and which houses have been approved for ADUs and know? Yeah, how do we know that this neighbor has gone through zoning and
So
they're
we keep a
approved?
list of the approved ones. When we get a report of what neighbors think that one is illegal, we go out and do the investigation that Hannah's talked about and see if we can verify that, yeah, that is an illegal ADU. We cite it. If we don't get compliance, we take it to court. We had one recently that was illegal that they did sell it because they were not going to live there as the primary owner. And we had another one that was being used as a short-term rental that we came down on, and they went to the city council, tried to get a zone change to get it approved as a short-term rental. The city council said no. So that property owner is being told, and we'll go to court if we have to. He's got to live there and it cannot be used as a short-term rental. My guess is that guy will end up selling too.
Okay, so as a citizen, we can't check on that. We just have to call and report to zoning and let them know that we have suspicions or are wondering if they have permission to rent.
Yes.
Okay, that's the route we have to go.
Can we be informed of the zoning changes that are being up for debate right now within, because like on our agenda, it said like zoning changes citywide or like things that you're considering for ADUs or something like that. So I just don't know what is existing policy and what's being considered, what's on the table.
So where would they access that, Justin?
So that went to the planning commission, gosh, what was that, last week, Bill?
Yes.
That'll come back to the council at the next meeting, so a week from next, or 2 weeks from next Tuesday, so that'll be November 19th. It'll go before the council for.
So Rachel will do an email that will have that agenda listed out and the particulars. Right, and so now some of these, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, so since everywhere west of I-15 allows ADUs, a lot of those new codes aren't going to affect you. Like they're changing the age that you can have an ADU from 65 to 60. That's not gonna affect you because you can already have ADUs where you live. Or
Another amendment is just very much housekeeping, cleaning the code to make it easier to enforce, but isn't changing anything substantively.
Right, yeah, the second, I think it was the
Really,
second
none of it
kitchen one.
affects them actually.
Yeah, it's kind of the only one that we thought is this one here on the screen. That's the only one, when I talked to the policy
Yes.
analyst, that she said
That's
would
true.
affect the west side.
Yeah.
And so that's why we wanted Hannah to come speak and also let you know that this is going on. So it's about Provo City staff checking for owner occupancy during the rental dwelling license process. And so they're hoping that this will make it proactively checked to make sure that there's owner occupancy. and to make it clearer to the owners that they need to have this rental dwelling license. And they're hoping, and also to go after the LLCs. I think it had to be, was it all the members of the LLC had to be living in the home?
Mhm.
And so the planning commission actually voted to recommend denial. They didn't like everyone in the LLC having to live in the house. And they thought that it was making it harder to be a homeowner. And they also thought if they're going to do an illegal, if they're gonna do like not be owner occupied, they're also not gonna get a rental dwelling license. So they were kind of feeling that it wouldn't really work. And so that was kind of the planning commission's ideas, but it is going to the city council November 19th on there. And I also have here, because I'm not super good at the code or anything like that. So this one item that will affect your neighborhood, I do have some paper copies here. Feel free to grab one. It's got all the information that was sent to the planning commission and their decision and why they made their decision. So I've got 5 copies here, and I can also show you where to find it online if I don't have enough copies.
Several of these amendments actually were generated by the zoning enforcement people, and as referred to try to give them some extra tools they thought would be helpful to be able to enforce on illegalities. So that's the basis for some of these amendments.
So is the reason why West Provo is all like it's ADU approved, is that because historically West Provo didn't have basements because we're closer to the lake?
No, I think it was more because it's largely undeveloped, and so as it developed in the future, people would know those rules that ADUs are accepted, and we would make sure that homes as they come in have the adequate parking that Hannah's referred to, and the other requirements that she's referred to, that the homes are built that way.
And also the West Side representative before Becky wanted it that way.
To me, it seems like the best thing to do is to change the zoning from like allowing ADUs to make it where it's like case by case approval, like the east side, because when we're putting in all this low density housing or smaller lot sizes to make family, like make it more affordable for families. If we're really trying to make these new homes, this development that's happening out in West Provo affordable for families, we need to make sure that they're keeping that turnover owner occupied. And so when you put in like a new home with a basement apartment, then you do get, like I saw this in my neighborhood, we have probably maybe 10 new homes built, and 5 of them are rentals now because they were put in with the basement apartments. And so when it was like, oh, we're gonna get some families here, but really there's not very many people that are building up the community, it's just like more investment properties. And so I guess I'm more concerned about let's reevaluate what type of properties we're putting in on the west side. And if we are putting in these low density housing or townhomes and these smaller lot sizes, how can we ensure that those are actually going to be meant for families and not just like a bunch where these are rented out to a bunch of different single individuals?
I think one of the key points is that an ADU has to be owner occupied by law. So when we're talking about, these rentals that you're talking about, if they are renting out and it's.
Well, they start out like that, they
I know,
build
but
it.
But it's still according to law, then they're breaking the law, so
Yeah.
maybe we just need to have more teeth in being able to make sure that people comply.
So we have to police by
Yes.
calling the zoning commission and say, go check on these people or that address.
A lot of people can't buy homes unless they rent out part of it or something.
Yes, it's really hard for us as
You
city
guys
employees
do
to
it.
drive by and see what's being rented legally or not. So we try to make it easy and convenient, so you can go online and make a complaint. And then as soon as once you've made that complaint, the zoning enforcement officer should follow up with you and let you know it's been received, who's working on it, their name and contact.
So I'm curious, Sean and Andrew, in your neighborhood, because there are, what are you seeing with ADUs?
My neighbor specifically, he lives in Washington and rents it out to probably 10 singles.
Yeah, and these are new
There's-
homes that were just
Brand new.
built.
There's 10 cars that line the street.
And is
What
that
subdivision are you in?
against the law? I mean, is that okay? That's not okay.
My wife's
That's
complained
against
about it, but
He's
there
by the
hasn't
shoreline
been
middle
any.
school.
He's in Killshot. Killshot.
Question, is that blanket RDA approval, like ADU approval, is that just for new homes or is that for existing homes as well?
It just says it's allowed. I'm looking at it right now. Everything west of I-15.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah.
But Lisa,
So do you have to go through a process in order to create an ADU?
you do,
Yes.
but the problem is they're not. And they're investor occupied, and we cannot, like you said, more teeth. We cannot give enough of a fine for it not to be anything but a business transaction, right? So we're limited, and so we have a lot of investors approach.
So how do you get more teeth? Is it the legislature?
Well, and some of these things that we're talking
Because I
about.
thought that you could do that as a city.
Yes, we limit the state limit says to $1,000, which is nothing to these investors making tens of thousands of dollars on that.
That's good to know.
Investor, I have had letters from my management companies basically saying, don't worry about it. Rent it as a duplex, you rent it to all the singles, we'll pay the fine to the city. That's common knowledge. There is no teeth and they're handicapped by the legislature.
Okay.
So I will just say, look and see what's worked. I mean, to some extent, right? Because there are some areas of the city where I feel like it's gotten better. Like if
You have to be vigilant. It's up to the neighborhood.
yeah,
If it's successful or not, it's 100% up to if the neighborhood is vigilant about it. And
But
it's
I will-
exhausting.
How
I
often
will say
can
that
you levy the fine?
Wasatch was super vigilant, super vigilant. Our neighborhood is super vigilant. It's not successful for us, and I'm just putting a plug in for Provost, it's because we don't have parking regulation. And in my opinion, in a situation in our neighborhood where it's so bad and we only have 2 cars per place, no matter how many times we report people, no matter how many times, no matter how many personal lawyers that we call, we cannot stop it. But I'm just looking at the neighborhoods just north of us and how they are able to at least mitigate some of it.
So that's why we just implemented parking restrictions in Slate Canyon. And it has made a difference. We've had people sell homes. We've had people move. I mean, it's really inconvenient. But you also inconvenience decent people, right, that have 4 teenagers. But it's tricky. But the big difference we're trying now, and Bill Pepperoni taught us this, is we are trying to work on developments before they're even built. And like on the west side, there's a lot of that. And we can say, you know what? We build a development with no parking. We make them sign a development agreement that there'll be no parking on the street. So people don't even buy houses thinking they can park on the street. And number 2, we have them do covenants or, an HOA with covenants where it has to be owner occupied for the first 1 or 2 years, period. And if you do that, it keeps those initial investors that come out and buy 5 units or 4 units. And then we've also made some where every time it sells, it has to be owner occupied, which completely is like our newest thing, which I'm very excited about. So that the first owner can't even sell it to an investor. Every time it sells, it has to be owner occupied.
That's great.
This is an issue all around the country, and that's what other areas of the country have found to be helpful.
But it's a
It keeps
process.
it keeps away the institutional investors if they have to be owner occupied for a couple of years.
So is that part of the new CCRs for the neighborhood as they build, like that's?
All of that gets discussed when they come in for their zone change, their
Come to
project plan
us,
approvals.
we are worried, they'll say they want to do something, we're like, well, we're worried about owner occupancy, it's a huge issue in Provo. We don't want this to become a whole thing of renters, we don't want to have the same issue here as we do in Slate Canyon, we don't want the same issue here as we do in, whatever neighborhood's having trouble at the time. And so we get them to proffer it. And, they want the zone change, or they want to be able to build, this many houses, so it's a give and take.
So who comes up with the CCNRs then that will put in there that?
So they'll do most of their CCNRs, but we line up the ones we want. We say it has to be owned. So a developer could do this on their own. A developer who doesn't even need a zone change could decide, I'm gonna do a development that's not gonna become an investor property, and they could make up the CCNRs on their own. But when we're dealing with developers who want to build and want a zone change from us, we make them do it. Like we indirectly.
They submit those covenants to us, we review them, we make sure the wording is the way we need it to be.
And Bill wraps it up, like he lets them know in the beginning, hey, because our number 1 goal this year is to increase home ownership. That's our number 1 goal in the council. So he his staff can pass it on to them. So developers are getting to learn this about Provo, and they're learning that we're not gonna put up with this anymore of you putting up a swath of cheap houses that don't have enough driveway, don't have a good garage, and don't have any street parking, and you're gonna rent out to 10 students. We're sick of it. So they're learning that we're gonna be more particular.
So in the future, Provo City zoning and planning can make sure that that's always included in new developments.
Which is a big deal on the west side, right? So the west side, can they do CCNRs that don't allow ADUs? I don't think they can, right?
They do see CCNRs that don't allow ADUs.
On the west side.
Yeah, I guess the CCNRs are private covenant or private contract. If they wanted to take away from themselves a right that the zoning gives them.
Or they can pick a type of zone that doesn't. There are zones that don't allow ADUs. It's not like every single one on the west side can have it, period, when they're built. Because ADUs have to have they have to meet certain criteria.
Do they come from the developers who buy the property or the people who are selling the property?
It's CCNRs are part of a development. They're set up with the development and they sell with the home, like they never change.
Right, but when so west side is farmland, and as the farmland sells, a developer comes in and they can put any restrictions they want, right? So it's the developer who comes in and buys the land that makes the restrictions. It's not the seller of the property.
Right. Now, there are agreements people can make, right? Like there's been agreements of farmers who want, they don't want apartments, but they don't, I mean, you can make private deals with real estate all day long. So
a seller can sell it with whatever restrictions they want.
Right.
But it's usually the developer that we're negotiating with and we're requiring those things out of.
So we just had like a zoning review, but they didn't talk about like requiring anything from the CCRs that they would be like owner occupied or anything. Is that something we should have brought up with Aaron? Like, hey, this is something we wanted, or what?
No, because that's gonna be automatic. When that comes in, it gets further through a process. That's gonna get put on the table.
Okay.
Well, I think that's good to bring
but
up.
it's
with the
good. You should bring it
developers.
up as citizens that you care about that in your neighborhood.
Exactly.
Because the new one we just did in Slate Canyon, the neighborhood came out in droves and told us, make sure this doesn't happen.
So are you looking for in state law, just to have that amount removed and have the cities be able to set that amount for their RLPs?
We want it to
What you
be,
looking for, or you just want it increased?
we need it increased and we need to be able to like stack it on each other. You know, if you're gonna keep doing this, just paying the fee every month, because it doesn't matter because you're making so much money. We want to be able to stack it. Well, next month it's 2,000, the third month it's 3,000. Like we just need to be able to do it that actually hurts them. So it just doesn't hurt them. It's considered a utility fee and they just don't care.
So you just take off the ceiling.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're intending to do.
We met with Marcia. She came to our housing summit, and we met with other state leaders, and we did a whole brochure and we did a whole presentation.
Lisa was there too.
I came back Lisa.
Yeah, you were. And so it was just, you know, we're just trying to, just get some help.
Yeah, we need a lot of help with that, Lisa.
Sorry about that. Is there a way to kind of address the negatives, but also preserve a carve out for those owner occupiers who are trying to do an ADU, for example, to make it more affordable? I ask because that's my situation. First time home buyer, got a home out on the west, and it's hard with a 7.3 interest rate, right?
Yes.
And so I'm living in the home, and an ADU is a great way to help cover some of that payment, you know.
Well, I think.
And I see the investors too. Like, I totally see
Everybody
that.
loves the ones that are done honestly. The ones that are, you know, they take care of their parking, the owner actually lives in it, they're contributing to the neighborhood. And no one, we are happy about that. Like, that's great.
Are there still, with the proposed changes, is that gonna stay in place?
Oh, no, we're not hurting that.
On the west side, you'll be able to still do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I was under the impression like that there's like a special use provision that would be removed with some of the changes.
Just not on the west side, but this is in areas where we're spot zoning. You know, like where neighborhood has been established for 25 years and now suddenly you can talk to your neighbors and get 60% to sign. And it's been creating subdivision with neighbor, you know what I mean? It gets ugly. And like, our idea is ideally, it's best for the cohesiveness of the neighborhood not to change things suddenly. Like for us to suddenly take away your ADU when you bought it knowing it had an ADU, that doesn't seem fair, right?
Yeah.
And for people that have bought into a neighborhood that doesn't have ADUs, they purposely wanted that. And then we suddenly change it. Oh, no, now you can if you get, and they're like, wait, no. So we've all found that neighborhoods and people have a hard time when their zoning gets changed after they've bought it. Right? We don't wanna do that. So that's, and this special use provision we had was definitely doing that. It was just creating some tension. And then you're spot zoning all over, which is confusing, because people are like, wait, why is this happening? In our neighborhood, this isn't allowed. Well, I got it. It just is, we just didn't think it was a very good policy. And it's only happened like 7 times, I think. It's not highly used either.
Yeah. But in a situation where you're moving in and you don't have the ADU and you're trying to get one,
You just need to find an area that has a legal ADU already.
what if you already bought?
Well, you're on the
You're on
west
the west
side, so
side.
you don't have to.
So on the
worry
west, everyone on the west side is
Yes,
legal?
Everyone on the west side.
Broadview Shores is legal?
Yep. Legal.
Oh,
So you're good.
awesome.
Except for Broadview Shores. Do you buy into Broadview Shores?
Maybe, yes.
Then you're not allowed to have Broadview Shores.
It's in their covenants already. It's a.
Not even with the special permit.
No, no one, the special permit was never allowed there. It's not allowed in areas that couldn't. It's a PD zone. Which,
Last time Ivory Homes went through our plan approval, they put into that zone, no ADUs.
they got more density. They got to do the close houses closer together. There's not very much parking. Like the way that they tripled or something, that they highly increased the density and agreed to no ADUs.
Within their own.
Yeah.
So where do you look up your neighborhood CCNRs?
That would be your HOA or whatever.
Oh,
And
but
most
you don't have an
neighborhoods don't
HOA.
have an HOA, right? I don't have an HOA where I live, but
Yeah, we don't have them.
because if you're paying a monthly
guys don't
fee, you have an
HOA.
HOA.
You
Well,
do now?
I'm not in the HOA.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
Sean's
just
outside.
outside of the HOA.
Oh,
I built on some family property directly adjacent to.
oh, okay.
But like Broadview Shores has.
But-
We don't have an HOA.
CCNRs are usually recorded at the county too, where they're recorded at the county, so
So
you can look on the county records for the
It'll be in your
CCNRs.
closing docs.
Really
As I
appreciate
say,
it. Thank you.
Everybody download the app. That's what you need to do. You need to, and you need to turn them in.
What's the app?
It's, well, you just need to have an account on the city portal. So that when you Google Provo City zoning, you just automatically are logged in and you just get a habit of turning everybody in. And you need to get everybody to just do
Do you
the
just
same
have an
thing.
account on the city portal if you pay utilities?
Is that the same?
You sign up,
Yeah.
you put in your, what is it? You put in-
Provo.org/portal.
Oh, everything.
It's anonymous, and the neighborhoods that have been successful, in my opinion, is because the majority of the residents turn people in. In my neighborhood, the majority of residents are too scared to do it. Or the majority of my residents don't care, you know what I mean, or they're breaking the law anyway, so you don't wanna get to where the majority, you wanna get where 90% of the people are not okay with this, and 90% of the people know what to do, and 90% of the people are gonna turn them in. And you will have some success. You just don't want to get to where it's the other side. And contact your council rep when you have problems like that. And I would, that's my biggest advice.
Santa really is an authority on this topic. She's.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah.
But Paul Evans likes the online turn-in for any kind of zoning violation, whether it's trash, whether it's trailer on the street, because then you get a tracking number and then they can come back and they'll say, this has been taken care of, this hasn't been taken care of. So you get a response rather than just calling in customer service and then you don't know where it goes from there.
Yeah. And I keep it on a spreadsheet. We turn in and we track every single thing that we have turned in. So that when the zoning office says, that's been fixed, we're like, yeah, it has not been fixed. And, we can go back over and over again. So it's kind of a process that you have to do. And like I said, our executive board, we've done this for years. We always have 2 people like, who's going to be over the zoning enforcement? Because we're going to have that terrible job.
Can zoning, instead of like closing the case when you go and check for compliance, can you not leave it open and go back and check in 4 or 6 months and make sure that they're still compliant?
I don't know if you left it open like that, it would look like in the system that it hadn't been resolved. So you're asking
Well, is there then a way you close the case, but you know that in.
Resolve the case, but don't close it, is what you're
Right.
saying, maybe.
Yes, that way there's an ongoing checking of the properties and making sure that they're not trying to pull one over on you.
Yeah, we are in the process of trying to fix all of this. It's like a big tangled thing of rope that we're trying to figure out a better way to use our time, to use technology maybe. We're wondering if there's technology and apps and software we can use to make it easier and more effective. We're wondering if
I know there's short-term rental
we have
companies that check on those. I
that.
used to work for one,
Yeah,
and
we
so I
have
know
that.
that's what they do.
and that's been really helpful, but also state law limits us how we use that, and we have to have multiple things on top of that software.
I don't know.
It's not a bad idea, let me look into it, let me see what we can do.
Somebody's trying to get rid of that, but it's so hard with the legislature that we have.
It's a very developer happy legislature. I'm sorry.
Great discussion. Thank you very much for coming, Hannah, spending the evening with us. Next on the list here is a discussion on the Epic Regional Sports Park, and Tiffany is gonna help lead that discussion for us. The Regional Sports Park just opened within the last month. It's been about a month since it's been open. And there's been a lot of pros and cons, so.
Rachel, do you have the questions that I sent in?
Let me see if I have those.
So this has been a big topic for our community. We live right next to the regional sports park. My house is just like, not even a half mile away from where it is. And so we've had a lot of conversations, and we've gathered, and I kind of put together some questions that were being asked over and over in the community about this. So the first question, while she pulls it up, is how did the idea for the Epic Sports Park originate, and what is its primary purpose? So there's a fact page with the Epic Sports Park, and they don't quite address, well, the how did the idea originate? Because from my understanding, it was first originated and maybe like a couple of years ago under like the Welcome Provo banner, like this is gonna be a great asset to the community. And then when it was proposed again, or like further proposed down the road, it was under economic development. And so the purpose of the Epic Sports Park is not really clear. Since its opening, it seems like it's more of an economic development, but it's been marketed as an asset to the city. Which is difficult because the access isn't, the access is restricted. So their FAQ answer was the Epic Sports Park is designed as a premier regional sports venue, providing exceptional playing experience. So, so the fields are locked up, you have to pay for them. It's like $70 an hour for weekdays or something, $80 for weekends. And then if you need warm-up time, then you pay additional for that warm-up time. You're not supposed to warm up another field. So it's really it's a money-making it's a money-making scheme for the city to generate income. But I don't know if it generally matches up with the funding that came. So number two, when the land was acquired for the Epic Sports Park, the funding came from a land and water conservation fund grant conversion. So how is the city meeting the federal stipulation that all projects funded by the LWCF must be perpetually dedicated for public outdoor recreation use? So it's being privatized right now with the locked gates and like getting in these regional, drawing different sports teams for tournaments and things like that. But it's not accessible to the public. Nobody in the neighborhood could play on the fields unless you want to pay the $70 or whatever per hour. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not using inflammatory language with scheme on this. And also, this is a regional sports facility, much like the rec center or the golf course, where you do have to pay to play. We do have other things like that in Provo. So I just want to be.
I apologize for my scheme. I was looking for a better
term and not bubbled up to the tip of my tongue, but
Well, maybe Tiffany's point, I think it was marketed as a park, right?
yes. So
I had no
And
idea
so-
you had to pay to use it.
Yeah, I would say that
I think there's probably a dual, maybe a scheme is a little too far, but
Epic Sports Park.
we heard lots of presentations about this, and I don't remember them ever mentioning in this meeting that it was going to be locked up and that we were going to have to pay. So that's,
I
it
think
was a
that's-
surprise to me, having been on the board for like 2 years. So I'm wondering like, how, was there a disconnect? Did I miss the meeting where they mentioned, the one meeting where they mentioned that? Or like, how did we get in that state where it was kind of different from what we
That's
expected?
why I think everybody that lives in those neighborhoods right by that park, I think that's why a lot of them are very upset.
Yeah, like if you could have a discussion about it, it'd be one thing, but it kind of feels
Yeah.
like it was not told to the public that it was gonna be this way, and then it was launched that way.
It's a public park, suppose, sports park.
Yeah, I'd imagine it more like when they were describing it like the Orem soccer complex, if you've been there, where there are no gates, right? There's a little, the vineyard one, yeah, right, it's got the path around it, that's, every time they talked to us and we asked questions, it was like, they said that the walking path is gonna be open like 24/7 is what they had mentioned, I remember them
3
specifically
miles
saying
of
that.
it, right?
3 miles of it.
3 miles of walking, that's 24/7 access.
Yeah.
But you can't cut through now because.
No,
roads are
and now
locked.
there's not 3
Gotta
miles,
go all the way.
24/7 public access, like they said that there would be.
yeah, so number 3, what city departments were involved in the creation of the Epic Sports Park and what were the financial and recreational goals set by those departments? Because it just seems like there's a lot of, I mean, a lot of people thought we could benefit from this. And so there was some like collaboration regarding the Epic Sports Park, but it doesn't feel like the residents were, I mean, Haley and I sat in on, like, we were talking with the Parks and Rec, not the director, but with Foster and with Rylan to help like plan with, to help do the grand opening, to celebrate for our community. And we didn't know in those meetings even about like that it was going to be locked out. Like they said there'd be a gate because we were really concerned about parking and really concerned about like people coming into the neighborhood, but did not understand, nor was it mentioned that like that there's no way to access the playgrounds because there's no parking for the playgrounds because all the parking is locked. And I know that this is phase 1, so there's gonna have phase 2, and there's going to be development, but I guess our primary concern is like how can we as residents be involved with phase 2? So maybe it meets the needs, or if this is more of an economic endeavor, can we take some of the funding to establish a park in our neighborhood? Because there's no park in our neighborhood in Provo Bay at all, and no park within walking distance. And so we'd like to collaborate with the city to be more transparent in meeting the needs of the residents, as well as maybe meeting some of their fiscal goals that they have with this being a draw for people to come visit. So number 4 in the video, Epic Sports Park by the numbers, 40 million annual local spending impact is projected. So I was just curious, like, what is the breakdown of those numbers and in what areas are we expected to draw revenue? So like when they were saying Epic Sports Park by the numbers, like it really is going to be a financial boost to the west side, and they're planning for that because they rezoned there was like overflow parking that residents push back on, but it's been zoned to help with restaurants and hotels and things like that, which can be great as long as like we can. And I think the city has done some good things at managing the parking, because when some of the events were paid for parking, then people started coming into our neighborhood and parking, but the city is putting somebody there, which is good because we're not seeing as much parking, but it's a lot to man to kind of police that. So I'm just curious, like, where are we expecting the revenue? Like, is this from like other businesses that we're like expecting to bring people in, hotels, restaurants, like what's coming from like the park fees itself, to make this financially sustainable for them. Cause I know when I lived in South Jordan growing up, and there was a huge soccer complex there, that was like, that they just have, it was never like, the fields were never full. Like, and it was never, the idea behind this was the same behind West Jordan City. And then it was like $1 million even to just like maintain the grass every year. And they've since rezoned and repurposed that land. So just wondering where that money is going to break down. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanna be clear, like, you're asking these questions. You're gonna ask the Parks Department these questions? Are you wanting answers right now?
If people have, like, when we put this together, there are like if people have, I'm like, I looked up, but I'm like, there's a lot in emails and in Facebook posts and things like that. And so if we have some answers here, that'd be great. It's a discussion. It's not me like ranting.
Yeah, I'm just wondering for the purpose of this meeting.
Yeah,
like,
so
what are you hoping? Are you hoping we'll have answers, or we'll have different questions?
no, these are just like, yes, let's add on to these questions.
Think about.
Yeah, so if we have more questions, like maybe skim through and see, I got some other input from other residents that like, was like, these are the things that we hope to see, which I'd like to add on to that. But
We'll submit these to the city.
yeah, we'll submit
expect a
this to the
response back.
city and expect a response.
How can
So
we find out the response?
that's a good question. Rachel, do you know how we'll find out the response?
You can send it to me. I'll send, like, once we get all the questions, we can send it to the city. To Doug Robbins, sorry, I just shoved pizza in my mouth.
You deserve to eat.
Doug Robbins and Ryland. And then when we get the answers back, I usually put it in the newsletter or on the Facebook page, or I can email it straight to the neighborhood chairs.
We could probably have another discussion on this in the next
That's true.
neighborhood meeting,
Mhm.
going over the responses that we
Right.
received back from the city.
So do we want to just like, do you guys want to just read through them and then see if you have stuff to add? Would that be most helpful? Here, other questions?
Are there concerns from anybody
Yeah.
in regards to the Epic Sports Park that maybe you could voice those concerns and Tiffany could maybe respond to those are considered potentially in some of these questions, or let's add that to the list.
Well, I feel like we're getting more traffic down there. I was down in there.
Yeah.
We walk a lot, and it's like they're coming through that street down there at the end where they come out of the sports park towards us north.
That's 600 south.
Yeah, and they're past 600 south. There's no speed limit there, but it's a drag strip is what it is right now.
Yeah.
They got a speed sign that they were supposed to put up so people would slow down, but they got down by Sunset School.
Yeah.
100 yards from the stop sign.
Yeah, that's a
Now,
silly.
when you
Yeah.
take off, you're not gonna be unless you're in.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be up another 2 blocks.
Yeah, so we did, that was like our neighborhood grant from last year that I like got in at the end of the fiscal year, and it was kind of rushed to get everything put together, and it really took a long time I had to keep emailing every month like about this speed sign, and so once they finally were like, we're putting it in, but it's gonna be closer to 1,800, I was just like, I should have pushed back, because it's not even in our neighborhood boundaries, but I was just like, we're gonna lose this funding, it'll help somebody. And so the bottom, on the very last one, I put Provo Bay neighborhood requests a traffic study along 600 South to be conducted in the spring during weekend and regular weekday to determine new traffic patterns related to Epic Sports Park usage, and if necessary, a radar speed sign to be installed in Provo Bay neighborhood at 2050 West and 600 South. So that's what that was what the grant was written for, was 2050 West, and that's where we wanted it. And that was disheartening. I did talk to Vern Kessler about it. He was like, we put it by the stop sign because we don't want people speeding the rest of the way. We want to stop, like remind them at the very like at the very beginning, what the speed limit is, but I was like, well, people don't have a chance to zone out and like don't realize how fast they're going. Like we need a reminder after a stop sign when you picked up some speed, and so.
That's where that sign's at, you're going the 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why I'm requesting, because if we do a traffic study, then we don't need to use our neighborhood grant money for a radar speed sign. They should put it in. So it was just like, we had a month left last fiscal year to get that in. And it was just like, what can we use this on? Let's hurry and do this. And so I'm hoping that in the spring, because we did count and there were 40 cars in 2 minutes along 600 South. Like when there was a tournament going on. So there is an increase, so there needs to be a traffic study done and to see what, and we tried to preempt that, but it just didn't work out so well. So we'll try again.
While we're talking about traffic, something I would add is that I know in a meeting they said that the current traffic pattern would stay the same. So the road used to just turn, you had to turn, and there were no stop signs. And they said current pattern would stay, but then there would be a stop sign coming. So if you were coming north out of the park, then you would stop there. But instead they moved the stop sign.
But yeah, and it's a root spot.
You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You can write it down. The stop sign should be coming out of the park, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because instead people are going speeding down that Victory Lane or whatever it's called.
Is that 2470?
Yes.
That's the-
2470,
Yeah,
and they
where there's
just
like one
come,
going this way.
keep coming. They just go.
Yeah, there's no
Fast.
stop.
Going north, right? That's what you mean,
Yeah.
like
Going
they keep
north or
coming north
south,
through
then
the.
they keep going
Yes.
through
And
the
there's no
park.
stop there. They are the ones.
Because the
that
stop's
need-
at 600.
They need to stop
Instead of putting the stop at
Well,
600.
even
Yeah,
a
that would
three-way
make sense.
stop. would be
'Cause you have
better
to
than where
slow
they
down
put that
anyway
one at. That's
to
just-
turn.
Yeah,
So
that's good. Are you writing it down?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to add it there. What other ideas that you guys have or questions that you have regarding the Epic Sports Park that we can submit to? Yes.
Has there ever been any information on how much this park cost?
Yes, they had it on their website. I wanna say, cause I feel like, cause the revenue they expect is 40 million, right? Isn't that what they said? I think it was 20 million to build.
So.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It was Epic
A
Sports Park.
year. They're
I think
expecting.
they're gonna make $40 million a year.
They're expecting 40 millions of like increased
That would
spend in
hotel.
the city.
Yeah.
How much they expect to
That's how
get
much
from
people are gonna
taxes off. of that.
Spend it all.
So then the
I'm
sales
saying
tax.
like, people are gonna come in and book a hotel, you
Yeah.
book a hotel for $1,000, that counts towards that.
Okay,
but
so but in sales tax and property
Yeah,
tax
that's what they would
revenue,
hope
they
that-
haven't
I don't know, they
said.
would have to project that out, I haven't seen.
Yeah,
it,
that's
so.
why I wanted to see the breakdown of
Okay,
like
I
what,
think, I think those questions were great. I think you had it
yeah, Rachel?
Okay, we did have, Parks did reach out to me and they wanted to make sure that the residents knew about their new website. It's provo.org/epic. And so this has project updates, also talking about pickleballs, courts, stuff like that, things that are still being decided. So it has information on project updates. It's got, if you want to rent the facility, this is a new one because a lot of residents want a heads up when a big tournament is coming. They're going to add a calendar of events. So you can come and check and know when a big tournament is coming into your neighborhood. So that's coming soon. They also have a frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
And when they receive these questions from the community, they're putting them on here for the most part. I've had a lot of them where I've asked questions that I've seen on Facebook and then they put it right on the FAQ. So then that way you can it talks about parking, ADA access, like lighted fields, process for renting.
I did consult that in doing these questions, so I feel like maybe I did put like some of the answers that I saw in the FAQ or elsewhere. But I guess one thing that I do want to touch on too is one of my big questions is with the field rental, because they said that this was going to be like, we're gonna see 300 local teams, like 300, like flag football teams and soccer teams or whatever. But is like Provo Recreation going to be, are we subject to the same fees for field rental? Because if so, are the programs offered by Provo City going to increase? Because we have to pay for these field rentals, because what's happening in so many other neighborhoods, like with the Provo recreation program, specifically like Sertoma Park and Lakeshore Park, there's a lot of games going on at the same time and there's no parking and it overflows into the neighborhoods. And so it would be great if Epic Sports Park lessened some of that burden from those neighborhoods and we split up like some of that to some of that that burden of parking for where we have field, like, so it is being utilized by the local teams. And I guess, how is that going to be utilized by local teams? And are we going to feel an increase in registration fees and things like that to supplement for the cost of the fields? So that's one of my main concerns, but yeah.
Okay, I just noticed question number 9 about the bathrooms being available. That was also, they answered that one. So this is from Parks. It says, as the winter season approaches and field operations wind down, the Epic team has begun seasonal preparations. Both playgrounds, picnic areas, walking path, and family restrooms on the park's north end will remain accessible for year-round use.
Oh, great.
So walk-in gates are latched, but they remain unlocked and will through the winter season.
Okay.
So they wanted to make sure that you knew that, because that's a question we get asked all the
time. Okay.
Tiffany, do we know, does that mean the parking lot will be unlocked as well in the north?
No, just the access. As far as I know, just the access to the playgrounds, not the parking lots.
Because I've been twice this last week and they had that gate open, which I thought was a good thing, because otherwise there's no, like, parking is like a mile and a half away for anybody to go to any of those playgrounds, so I don't see them being.
If they're doing that, that's amazing. That's something that I know council has asked for, but we cannot tell them what to do, right?
Right.
This is a mayoral thing. It's gotta go from the mayor to the departments down. But that's a great question to ask them, is will they continue to have a gate open for parking on non-tournament days so that residents are able to come in?
Are they having a gate open for parking right now?
He said that they were.
Yeah, I saw, like, today I checked it and it was unlocked.
Was it not just for maintenance though?
I hardly saw anybody there, like, for maintenance. And then I went last week and they had both the maintenance side unlocked and the north end, but there were a couple people there. And so I'm just wondering if that's coincidental, that I just happened to go a couple times and they're unlocked, or whether that's a plan.
I've been a few times and it seems like it's been hit or miss. Like, some days it's locked, some days it's unlocked and open. I don't know if it's just intentional or unintentional.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask.
I guess Becky, and Rachel, I don't know if either one of you know the answer to this, but I think it's great that they now have a website, right, where we can go and get some answers and clarification with things. My question is, I mean, we see that Provo doesn't have a lot of places to build except on the west side, right? And I imagine there will be future developments and projects that, you know, could be similar to something like this. And I think a big problem that we're having is the community feels like there's been major miscommunication and that we've been misled with intentions, and that the project changed from when it started to now, and that we were not kept informed with the changes and when they decided to change things. And I'm just wondering, in the future, when the city does big projects like this that will impact the immediate community, can they not start a website from the beginning and list, like, these are our plans and this is our tentative, I mean, I know that when you build, there's all kinds of setbacks and it's hard to keep the schedule. But if they know that originally, I mean, I remember coming to the meeting when they said there were gonna be no gates around the fields. And I remember Mr. Carter throwing a fit that there were gonna be no gates around the fields because he was concerned about his fields being, and I remember being here for that, and all of a sudden there were gates around everything, and I thought, oh, the last meeting I went to, there were no gates gonna be. And so I'm just wondering if they can update the community and let us know, we've met in our meetings, we've changed our minds, this is now our intent, and this is what we're doing. Like, is there anything like that with the city for more transparency for the community to be involved with changes as they go?
I know that's something I've been really trying to push, even with Public Works putting their traffic studies online. So anyone can go and see the traffic studies that are presented in the neighborhood meetings. I would love for those to be on the engineering page. And that's something, I know they keep telling me it's gonna happen, but I think it's a different mindset. They're thinking, I need to build this park, I'm concentrating on this park. They're not thinking communication, websites, FAQs. That's kind of not their wheelhouse. And I think the community let them know that, hey, you know, we need to know what's going on. And so they are responding to the community. But I don't think it was intentional on their part. I think it's just not how they're concentrating on building this park. And, you know, they're talking amongst themselves, so that they're kind of thinking everyone knows about this and not realizing that most people don't know if you're not involved in the
Right,
park.
but I mean, when you propose something and then you're building, I don't know, I guess I assume that these meetings that we come to as the neighborhood is where we get informed of things like that.
Right.
And so I feel like there should be updates continually as things change. And if it, I mean, especially for our neighborhood in this meeting, because we're the ones directly affected by it.
Right. I'm wondering if this had been just something simple as presenting this as the Epic Sports facility rather than the Epic Sports Park. Do we all have, like, for me in my brain, I'm thinking of a park one way, and then I see this and I'm like, oh, you know, or something.
Helped a little bit, I think. I think there's also times where we like blatantly ask and the answer we got has since changed. And right, like that's when we asked about the trails and that being open and how we'd be able to access it. It seems like it's changed since then and we didn't know about that, so.
Right.
But I think that's one of the things that they're a little bit leery about when I talk to different departments, is they get afraid if they say too much, they're gonna get held to this and then something's gonna change and then people aren't going to understand the change. And so I think you're fighting a little bit of that as well. Does that make sense? Because they don't want this expectation and then have something change and then all of a sudden not be
That's
able to.
exactly what happens though.
Yeah.
And I think had they been clear and told us that something was changing, I think we'd be more understanding. Because I think we all recognize that when you build something this massive, like changes are happening along the way and things come up. I'd be more understanding. I would have just liked to have known that they were changing things along the way than how they represented it to us from the beginning.
I mean, this fee thing had to have been considered very early on to make this project feasible, I'd imagine. But never in a public meeting, neighborhood meeting like this, was there mention that it wouldn't be accessible to the public, free of charge, right?
It was really.
And so we were told a variety of different things. Oh, the west side is getting this grand, awesome park. Don't worry about footprinters. Don't worry about this park. Don't worry about that park. You guys are getting this glorious, epic park that you have to pay to go to.
It was super sad at the grand opening when my son brought his soccer ball and he was like, let's go play on the fields. And I'm like, oh, we're not supposed to, you know? And he's like, can we go back later today? And I'm like, no, these fields aren't for us, you know? And that was like, he's 7 and that sucked because he had played at a different place and missed the grand opening. And we came after a soccer game and he's like, soccer is so important to him. And he was really excited to be able to go practice with mom and dad somewhere close. Like, because he can't do, like, our backyard isn't big enough to accommodate a full-size net, you know? And that he's like, oh, well, why is it here? You know, for him to wrap his head around that.
Well, even if they had a couple of fields open.
Yeah, and they're
Maybe they don't need to
supposed,
have them all open,
yeah,
but
we're
open a
supposed to
few.
have some public fields 2 years from now.
At least the kids could go over there and play during the day.
Yeah, so that we did get a comment, Tori Christensen wasn't able to be here, but she said, I think people really want to be involved with this second phase or whatever this looks like so that it meets the needs of the neighborhood. She wants open area for open play, like where you can do kites and stomp rockets, frisbee, a place for babies to play. She said, playground is fun, but children need less program space and a natural play space. Rock Canyon Park had delightful natural play spaces, so I was disappointed when they chose Oak Groves to place a new playground. Playgrounds appeal to all ages, but having a nearby grassy field for more free play for my baby turning toddler to simply crawl or wander. So yeah, I mean, like even the playgrounds itself, like I guess like I think all of us moms are like, can we be involved with the next playground? Like, because it's like very thematic. One's the spinny playground, one's the climbing playground that has the same feature over and over. If you climb one period, you climb them all. And then I took my little nephew who's 2 and like the older kids could climb, but there was literally nothing for him to do at that playground.
That climbing park's a waste of money.
So more mixed use playground where there's a variety of things for all ages. Yeah, and then she just wanted an open parking lot for riding bikes. When kids are learning to ride their bike, it's so nice to be able to be like, here, we're gonna practice, like, you know, at this open parking lot. And green space. She likes the idea of a riding path, but it kind of feels like walking next to a prison. With gates closed, once you're in it, you are committed, but I was hoping for a path with multiple exits and entrances so you could choose how long you want to ride with kids. And I did find that, I found that problematic. Like I jogged around, I'm a runner, and so I couldn't get out. I could only get in the one gate and then I'd have to go back out that gate, but I was short on time, so I had to trespass on fields to get to my neighborhood because I couldn't get or climb over the fence to get out the way. So there was no loop for me. It was like loop the whole park, then go back out and go all the way around, when it should be like loop the park and then exit. So, which I guess they're unlocking something, so that's nicer.
They do have plans.
Yeah.
I would verify that though and make sure that's the case, that they are unlocking the parking lot, or if they're willing to unlock the parking lot during the week when there's no events, or during the weekend when they
But I think it was really helpful to know that the restrooms will be unlocked year round, because it's always like, ooh, like we got little kids here and then emergencies happen, so.
What do you mean little kids, old people?
Yeah, does anybody else have anything else they want to add for questions?
Maybe I just wanted to add a comment with the transparency thing. I think where I feel a little bit frustrated about it is with their answer, like on the facts page, of them saying that they're still trying to sort out whether it's gonna be available to the public. I feel in my personal feelings is that's kind of how the park almost felt until like the week they're opening it, and then all of a sudden the signs go up that authorized play only. I have a hard time believing that somebody somewhere doesn't know what the plan is for the pickleball courts and just doesn't want to say it because they're afraid that we won't be able to take the answers. And so they'd rather just let it go on until the week before they open the pickleball courts, and then they'll put up all their signs, is how I feel about it, just because of what's happened previously. I would just love it to see that if they don't have answers to things, because it seems hard to believe that they wouldn't have answers like that when there's so much money going into this and so many plans. Like somebody's got to know if they're making signs, somebody's got to know if they're planning on putting locks on, on things. Like those answers have got to surface at some point, not a week before they open the pickleball field. So my point of it is just that's where I feel like we're not being treated transparently. It's just, I feel like some of the answers are just feeling really vague to avoid giving us clear answers. that I think could be answered. Anyway, that's just a comment, not a question.
Does anybody else have anything else they wanna add? Any questions to this document to send out? That's great, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Tiffany. Appreciate your time. Thanks everyone for your comments. Streets updates, Rachel, do you have some slides that you'll?
So many slides.
Awesome.
So many updates, so I'm just gonna kind of tear through these. Okay, so first of all, 1020 South traffic study. Here's 1020 South, it's a local street. And crash data, 2 crashes, one in 2021, one in 2022. Something that Vern always says is to report the crashes. A lot of times crashes happen, but nobody reports them. Even if it's a simple 311, just something so it can be on his traffic reports. So even if you just witness it, like walking down the street or something. The crash location was right here. We're gonna skip those. And then this is where he put the speed and volume monitor, was right here. And we're going to get to the summary on here. So the summary, in the summary, he has 1 crash, but on the other slide, it has 2 crashes. So let's go with 2 crashes. Overall average speed is 26 miles per hour. It's a 25 mile per hour zone. But the 85% is what you need to pay attention to, because that's what 85% of the cars are going. The speed is 30 miles per hour. Total vehicles, a little bit over 6,000, which averages 81 vehicles an hour or 1,900 vehicles daily. His possible solutions is install a 25 mile per hour sign on 1020 South, just west of 770 West. He says there's already one eastbound, and to provide the speed information to the police department.
That study was done in March, right? So before the middle school opened?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me see when that, yes, March 2024.
I would recommend another one or even asking for
So,
another one.
Yeah,
And another
before they
study.
shut down 600 South and opened the middle school.
Run it on 1020 instead of 1150.
Yeah, I would wait until all that construction is done.
Yeah, it's definitely fair. I'm just saying things have changed significantly.
And that subdivision, you're gonna wanna wait till that subdivision's done because they close that street periodically, right?
So who submits to have the study redone then?
So the studies have to go through the neighborhood chairs. So if the neighborhood board wants a study done, they can contact Vern or they can contact me and I'll contact Vern. He has too many, like the whole neighborhood will call him about studies, so he wants it to go through the neighborhood board. And let's get the next one over here.
And is that the same then, like so any study we want done, whether it revolves around like a middle school, like Shoreline, does he want us to go through the neighborhood board or do we go through the community council?
I mean, you can go through, if you're on the community council and you want to go through there, if it's the safe route. He just gets bogged down when he has like 20 different people all asking for kind of the same area. And so he just, if it's in a neighborhood meeting, he would like the request to come from someone on the board. Okay. Okay, so that's that one. And then the next one, this is the 500 West, 1200 South traffic study. So let's go through this one. And so this is a 500 West is a minor arterial road and 1200 South is a collector road. Crash data, 2 crashes, both in 2022. And the crash data is usually just for a couple of years. It was property damage on that one. And here's where both of the crashes took place, right there. And then here's where he put the speed monitors. So one on each street. And these were done in April on that. And again, these are both 25 miles per hour. Okay, this is really interesting. So this is 500 West. You'll see it's 25 miles per hour is the speed limit. The average speed was 40, 85% speed was 43, southbound speed 30, 85% speed 36. But when you look at the highest speed, highest northbound speed was in the 51 to 55, highest southbound speed 71 to 75 miles per hour.
Getting on the freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to get.
Right there, I have there's no traffic, anything from 9th South to the Lakeview Park.
Yeah, it's a straight shot, yeah.
It is a straight shot, and I've fought this battle for years. That's why we did our speed signs years ago. It's bad.
When you have people living on that street, right? There's houses.
There's like 2 miles of pure houses, and people just.
And then the speed results for 1200 South, again, posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour. The average is 25, 85% is 29, and then westbound, the average is 34. 85% of the cars are going at least 39. And then highest speeds in the 66 to 70 mile per hour category again.
How do you even get going that fast?
I don't even know.
It's such a short road.
It's like such a short road.
That's the one between like the church and the mall, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
From the mall to the 500 West.
I don't know how you can go
Trying
that
to beat
fast.
the train.
It's crazy. And so, and then the volumes were about 91 vehicles per hour northbound, 110 vehicles per hour southbound. That was for 500 west. For 1200 south, 111 vehicles eastbound, 126 vehicles per hour westbound. So here's his summary. So 2 crashes reported, 500 west, average speed 34, 85% is 42, about 200 vehicles per hour total. 1200 south, 28 miles per hour, 85% is 37 miles per hour, about 237 vehicles per hour. He has provided the speed information to the police department, and he has, I think he's already spoken to the police department on this. He was horrified by these numbers to deploy the speed radar trailer in those areas. So those are those 2 reports. And then let me get back to, and then we have a whole slew where every time someone asked me about a street, I went to either UDOT or the traffic manager. So I often get asked about widening Geneva Road and Center Street. And the traffic manager said the Mountain Land Association of Governments shows the widening from Provo Center Street to Lakeview Parkway as a phase 1, 2023 to 2032 project. It also shows the widening of Center Street from I-15 to Geneva Road as a phase 2, 2033 to 2042 project.
I want to clarify this one a little bit. So MAG, Mountain Land Associated Governments, this is just a funding source, right? And so they have long range plans of like 40 years. And so these are just pie in the sky projects that they put up there. What really triggers a widening of a road would be if you're gonna have a substantial development. Well, that would probably, the death of the child didn't even widen the road up by the rec center, right? That was just an island. Yeah, so it follows certain triggers, and he has a certain book of laws and things that he has to follow. He did a study in February, March on Center Street, and he said it was like 56% of capacity, so there's no way that that's ever gonna get widened.
Yeah, not anytime soon.
Yeah, and even then, when you go to a funding of a project, what has to happen is all the municipalities in MAG, they submit their want. And then they have, like ours would be our traffic engineer, he would go out and they have these people that rate these projects like most needed to least needed. And then the mayors of the municipalities will come together and they'll vote on which one gets the funding and which one doesn't. So that's kind of how that works. Just because it's on a MAG list doesn't mean that's gonna get done.
MAG is what's called the NPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization for this area. And there's NPOs throughout the nation, but NPOs are what gets it's federal funding for roadways. And so MAG has a lot of funding, federal funding. But again, if those decision makers, mayors, usually public works directors, city engineers, if they don't see the value in the project in that, or the need for the project, that funding will go to other projects within the MPO. MAG is pretch much all of Utah County, and I think it might even go up into Heber.
It does, Summit County.
Magda's Wasatch as well.
Yeah, and Summit. One of the things I've noticed by attending the MPOs too, it's like the mayors. I was talking to Orem Mayor today, and I said, it's talking about Geneva Road and about what people are telling me they want and what the needs are. And then I think about, oh, yes, but Main Street in Santaquin is a complete disaster. And then you have 2100 North, which is a complete disaster, and Pioneer Crossing that they're trying to fix. So our Geneva Road isn't everybody else's top project. In fact, it's way down on the bottom.
Well, they widened it from Pleasant Grove to University Parkway 20 years ago, and they should have just kept going. Right to
They
Center
spent
Street.
so much money on that road. We lived on Geneva Road, and you would not believe how many surveys they did to widen that road all the way to the freeway. And all that money now that they spent on that just shoved aside probably.
Oh, it's wasted.
Well, yeah, I mean,
They
we
could have
lived on
done it
that. We,
cheaper then.
yeah. We went to all kinds of meetings and they had.
So we
surveyed
moved.
it.
Okay, the next one is Trail Along Geneva Road. So I spoke to UDOT. And they said they're currently studying the potential impacts and costs to place a shared use path along Geneva Road. And so I guess they did an environmental impact statement in 2009. And so the full project to widen Geneva Road to 3 travel lanes, shoulders, curb, gutter, sidewalk, planter strips, and the path is estimated to be in the $110 to $120 million range. And so right now they're just doing this study and it will identify the project cost to compete for funding to allow the path to be built. And so the study, they're expected to be done in early 2025, but I don't know when that will be done. Then next question, finishing Lakeview Parkway from Provo High to 2000 North. The traffic manager says Provo City crews are currently working on installing utility mains. It's anticipated that the project advertisement will be published spring 2025 for roadway construction, and only 2 lanes will be completed along with the trail. So, and I don't know how long it takes between publishing the advertisement to when they actually do
I think
work.
that's just a request for proposal, right?
Is that just a request for, that's what I.
Because they're doing the utilities right now. I think they have the
Oh,
water
okay.
line and then they're gonna get the sewer line in, I think early spring. And then after that, and it also depends on their funding, right? How much funding we get.
Okay, next one, finishing Lakeview Parkway Trail from 620 North to 2000 North. So they're advertising this project in spring 2025 for construction of Lakeview Parkway, the trail, and 2000 North as one project. So it looks like they're advertising a lot to kind of see who will do it. And then connecting 2000 North from Geneva Road to Lakeview Parkway. Currently, the contractor is on site installing utilities. The roadway construction will be part of the Lakeview Parkway construction. So it looks like they're at least starting on that one. And then the westbound radar sign on Center Street. So this one I was asking because we had a question in our last meeting about using neighborhood district funds to purchase a radar sign on the westbound side of Center Street. But the traffic manager says this is an arterial road and Provo City Engineering paid for this project. So does that mean there's already one there? Is anyone on that road and no?
Westbound on Center Street?
Yeah, westbound on Center Street.
Where did they say there's one?
There's a westbound one.
Is there a westbound? Okay.
It was installed a couple months ago.
Oh, okay,
It's
so-
after the stop.
After
light,
they
but
resurfaced it.
not immediately
Oh,
after.
Resurfaced
Not
it.
100 feet.
That's right. New neighborhood,
It's by the
right?
new neighborhood.
It's by the new neighborhood
It's
on
by the
north
Narwhal
side.
Homes neighborhood, whatever that's called.
Okay, thank you. That must have been an old question I had on my paper.
And he
Thanks.
put a turning lane in all the way up to the Amelia Earhart turnoff, which is nice.
Oh.
When they resurfaced that road, they put that turning lane in.
Okay, next one is talking about sidewalks, Sunset View Elementary and Shoreline Middle School. So traffic manager says a concrete sidewalk will be installed on the south side of 600 South between 1600 West and 1400 West. The project is currently being redesigned. Telecommunications poles have been removed. This project will go out to bid this winter. Estimated start date is spring 2025. Estimated completion date is fall 2025.
Congratulations.
What about the middle school one on, is that 1100 West?
That one's under progress right now, right?
Seems like it.
Oh, is that the next one? Okay. So stormwater project along 1100 West from 600 South to 890 South. Crews are nearly complete with the storm drain on 600 South and are paving 600 South. They are currently working along the west side of 1100 West. Sidewalk will also be installed on the west side of 1100 West.
Only to 890 South, right?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
copying and pasting his.
To the middle school.
So the goal is to get all that stormwater into Footprinters Pond, right? So the storm drain will come all the way down, but the sidewalk's only gonna hit that turn lane, that road that goes in front of the middle school.
There's already sidewalk the rest
Already
of the way.
sidewalk below 890.
Is there?
At least down to whatever that street is that Footprint.
Down to
1150,
1150,
yeah.
So storm drain, if you're looking at relief from construction, it's gonna go all the way down. And that won't be a while, will it? I don't think that, I think that project's not scheduled to be done until spring-ish.
I don't know. I'm not sure on that.
Do we have
Probably,
any,
they're not gonna be paving this year anymore, so. it's probably next year.
is there an estimate of when 600 South will be opened back up?
It is.
It
It
is
is open now.
It
They
is
opened it
open
like
now.
last week.
Oh, okay. So you can go.
You can get through underneath the freeway. They've got their equipment parked underneath, but like there's enough space that you can get through
So
now.
you can drive. That's 600 South now. Okay.
Okay, next one is the mill and overlay on Center Street. All the road maintenance has been completed. I think that's the one Counselor Bogdan was talking about where they put in the radar sign. Plans for 1600 West regarding increased traffic and pedestrians. So 1600 West is Collector Street and has been designated such since 2003. And an extension from 1150 South to Lakeview Parkway will be development driven and built to collector standards that include sidewalks as identified in the Provo City Transportation Master Plan. So to make sure I'm right on that. So as people develop, as they put in homes, they have to put in the sidewalk also. So that's what he means by development driven. It will connect to Lakeview Parkway just as 500 West, 1100 West, and 2470 West has connected, and the future 2050 West. Traffic will increase as land is developed. Appropriate space yield signs, stop signs, roundabouts, and traffic signals will be installed at intersections when they are warranted. So that's what Councilor Bogdan always reminds us of, those warrants where we have to follow the state codes as to where roundabouts can be, stop signs, yield signs, all of that. So that will be based on traffic.
But there's no current plan to extend 1600 West to Lakeview Parkway at this point.
There is, but it's only gonna be done as.
As the land around it develops.
As it
As
develops,
it's developed, so.
right,
As those parcels develop,
yeah.
the roads.
And the
It's gonna
same
be-
thing with that sidewalk, they have to move those utility lines and to widen that road. Really, 1600 West has always been an alleyway. It's just been very narrow.
Yes, it is.
And it's a mess, it's a disaster. But we don't own a lot of the right of way and it's super expensive to move the utilities. And so even though we have a little bit of portion of sidewalk throughout that, we're not gonna get a full sidewalk until like the field develops or some of those older houses redevelop. They are planning on doing a sidewalk that's been a mess from the corner of 6 South all the way down to the end of that ratty subdivision that keeps on they keep on having problems with, but that's gonna be wrapped up in that 6 south from 1400 west to 1600 west.
Did the
He said
city
they'll go
pull the
ahead and do
bond on that to do that then?
Pardon?
Did the city pull the bond on that development to do that?
He is really hesitant on wanting to pull that bond, but for some reason,
So how is the city doing it with what funds?
I am not clear. I was just super ecstatic that he told me they were gonna finish it out.
Now, 2050 West is Geneva Road, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's gonna
2050
be
is our
connected.
section of Geneva Road. Geneva Road is actually the state's, right? 2050 is where we take it
Yeah, so that's gonna be connected to the,
on. Eventually, yes, as, like she said, development driven. So as we get plans that come in, those developers will pay for that road and then it'll stub off. Until it eventually connects all the way through.
We're over time, so thank you, Rachel, for running through those. We do have a section split out for public comment. I appreciate the public comment throughout the meeting. It's been great.
Do you want me to tell you about school stuff?
Yeah, yes, I do. That'd be great.
I only have 2
Please.
things to tell you. Okay, so let me get my glasses. Okay, so the school board decided to, you know, we have committees that we need the public input on. So we're gonna start doing it the way the city does it. You go to the website and you fill out a form and then you pick which committee you wanna be on, or like the different boards the city has, like the library board or the Parks and Rec board, or, you know, whatever. You fill it out, you submit it, and then your name gets put in a pool and, you know, your name gets picked out when it's time for a new person to be put on the committee. So that is live on the school district's website already. You can look that up. And then for those of you who couldn't come yesterday to Dixon Middle School, we had the fun trunk or treat, and we also, the superintendent did a presentation on what we're gonna do with Dixon. So I always have to, I forget to tell people this, the building will be demolished. So let me say that first. The building will be demolished, and then we're gonna put something new there. So that's the decision. Whether we go and put a CTE school there, which is a career and technical education programs there, or the other plan is to move Timpanogos from Timpanogos and build a brand new elementary school at Dixon, and then use Timpanogos as the CTE school. And then we also need to put, like, the adult ed program is in a trailer next to Independence High School, East Bay Post High, which is the school kids who are allowed to go to school, I think until they're 25. They're allowed to go to 22. They need a new place because right now they're in a rental place in East Bay. And a whole bunch of other programs, we would want to put them together with the CTE school. And please email me, terim@provo.edu, and tell me which one you prefer. Yes.
What would be, I guess, is it too early to know like costs surrounding
Yes.
like?
We can now estimate what it will cost because we already own the land, so we don't have to buy land.
Yeah.
So it's just the building. It'll be approximately 45 million for elementary school and about 25 million for a CTE school.
And it won't have walls.
Yes.
And it will have what?
Wasatch walls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it won't have a wall, no. Yeah.
And is Timpanogos, is that like the primary argument just because it is like not on Main Street, like to be more
No,
central?
it's also too small.
Oh, it's too small.
Yeah, there's over 600 kids at that school and it wasn't built for 600 kids.
How many years old is it?
Not very many, I think
Yeah,
it's
and like
2013.
Yeah.
10?
Will your zone study have any effect on that?
Yes, so we're doing a boundary study and that's gonna help us decide and also what everybody wants.
Is that close down to Timpanogos if you build that school, or is it an additional school?
No, we would convert it into a CTE school. Yeah, so that would be another $25 million along with the
convert that.
elementary, so it'll be
So it'll be
75
a lot
million.
more expensive.
Along with finishing Timpview, which will be $60 million. So there's two options for that, whether we do a municipal building authority bond, which the board will vote on, or a general obligation bond, which you guys get to vote on, which would be on the ballot a year from now.
I've been being asked, will the tennis courts stay at Dixon?
I have no idea. Yeah, I know tennis courts are wanted. Rachel, did you have a question?
I just have one more comment when you're done.
I'm done.
So this is from John Bunderson, who works for Parks and is also a West Side resident. He wanted to make sure people knew that after 40 years, West Park has been upgraded. It has basketball and pickleball court, pavilion, restrooms, shaded swing set, modern water efficient irrigation system, shade trees, wildflowers, parking stalls, and a paved access road. This is all thanks to the RAP tax, Recreation, Arts and Parks. So he wanted to make sure that you check it out.
That is, they're excited over there about that. That is amazing.
Okay, real quick, is there any other public comments before we close? This meeting's been great.
Thanks, everyone.
Probably one of the best attended meetings I've been to, so thanks for coming and participating. Next meeting is the middle of February, February 19th. So it's done.
I just, Sharon Adams on Facebook asked, what is happening with the property on the corner of Geneva and Center? So, I don't know.
The grocery store.
What is going on with it? It has been pre-zoned for mixed use. Smiths does not own the entire property. Smiths only owns a fraction of it, and they've leased another fraction of it, so they don't even own enough to put a store on it. And that lease expires in the next few years. And so the city, to try to do a stick to get Smiths to build, pre-zoned it so that it is mixed use. And Smiths is not gonna go forward with anything at this time. So my guess is the future of that property will probably be, probably the majority of apartments.
See what happened on the home on Geneva Road and 820 North? It's the little white house. It is the northwest corner. So it looks like there was like an eviction and has signs that say no trespassing on it. Nobody's there anymore. Kind of curious. Okay, Sean.
Tucker.
Again, thank you, everyone. We'll see you in February.